Hey, we're back. I'm your host, BKP, and we're at Circuit World here in Blue Ridge, and I'm here with Dr. Whaley. It's time for Ask the Doc. I've been handed some breaking news during the commercials. First time ever
Fox
at Circuit
News
World.
Alert.
The Fox News Alert.
This is
breaking news.
Fetcher News Alert.
FYN breaking news. First time ever at Circuit World. 6 months, same as cash, and $10 down till the end of February. JR, is that everything?
Everything.
So if I walk in the store, I got $10?
You get it, put it down.
So they find $10?
On that TV right there?
On that TV?
$10. $10 down.
Same as cash. 6 months.
Yep.
Okay, folks. I'll talk to you during the next commercial. There's 2 TVs I got my eye on. Sam's got her eye on something. Dr. Whaley, let's get to our thank you to Georgia Cancer Specialist for this segment every week. Dr. Whaley, how are you?
I'm great.
How would you like to open up this morning, sir?
Well, Sam knows that I'm a real patron of the arts, that I like to go to museums and see arts. That's a joke, of course.
Okay.
I like Remington's Western art, a few things like that. I have been made aware of this official portrait of ex-President Obama.
Why did I think you were going to bring this up?
Well, I just was so offended by it and the Communist News Network and my own daughter in New York talking about how Mr. Trump is a racist and so forth, and the artist who did that portrait of our president sitting among the daisies or whatever has that picture of the Amazon woman with the head cut off and has several of those. And a man's known by his work.
Right.
And Remington, you knew if you asked Remington to paint you a picture, it's going to have something to do with horses and Indians and cowboys.
Exactly.
And there's a very nice picture outside my office that was done by a famous artist in West Virginia without my knowledge, where I looked like Daniel Boone. But she was famous for doing Daniel Boone. So I don't know how you could choose somebody with that type of a background to make a picture to hang in the White House. When you look at all of those pictures going back, and every one of them, I mean, Clinton and I mean,
Reagan, all of them.
No, Reagan. I admire Reagan, but I mean, you got Clinton. He looks good. He looks.
Right.
He looks distinguished.
I know where you're going.
Okay,
I know.
He looks distinguished, and people that you wouldn't particularly care for, they rose up and have really nice pictures.
Well, let me say this. Let me say this, because I think you're hitting exactly the way I looked at it this week. Because somebody brings me something, and they give it to me, and I'll say to myself, What were you going for? What were you? I mean, what was the intent here? What are you going for? I don't know what he was going for in this picture, because all of our presidents, our former presidents, their official portraits had a view of like strength.
Yes.
Solid.
Right.
I was president of the United States.
Yeah, and they're dignified.
You know what I'm saying? The whole list. And then when you see that portrait, you're thinking, what were you going for?
Go back to what did Winston Churchill do with the picture that was made of him by the Parliament in the last few months of his...
Exactly.
They made him look old. They hung it. He accepted it. He took it home, and then a few months later, he burned it in the yard. It never hung anywhere. He burned it, and that's he was not willing to accept a picture that would last for all of recorded history of him as anything other than our finest hour in a.
I could not.
That's got nothing to do with eczema on the hands.
No, but I'm with you. What were you going for? What were you going for? Sitting in a field full of daisies, and I'll bring that up with the all-star panel. In fact, I have my joke lined up for that one, and I don't want to give my joke away now. I have to save that one for Jane. Ask the doc. First of all, before we get into our questions, if you ever have a question for the doc, you send it to info @fetchernews.com. Put in the subject area, ask the doc, and we will get those over to Dr. Whaley hopefully, and also get your question answered on the show.
I want to ask the editorial board about that screens the questions. I actually got a question myself Tuesday that I elected not to bring up, and it was asked, as serious as a train wreck, asked me to discuss the various colors and characteristics of bowel movements. And I figured that that was probably just a little bit long for this, and that we'd rather discuss hand eczema. So the editorial board will filter through the questions, but I will answer any question that doesn't make it to the program. I answered that question off the air.
We'll do that one as a special edition.
I've already answered it off the air. Go ahead.
Probiotic health. Okay, let's bring this back to eczema. Okay, let's stop talking. All right.
First picture, the good one.
I have started having dry patches on my hands. Is it common to have eczema if I'm over 30 and have never had it before? Does the skin change and you start having over 30?
You know, sometimes these questions, it seems so simple, open up this huge onion you can peel many, many layers off. I'm going to read you a really question. First of all, eczema and atopic dermatitis are exactly the same thing. It's an interchangeable word. So when people think eczema, I think they think of more severe case of it. We're going to show another picture in a minute. But atopic dermatitis, I'm reading the official definition, is a chronic pruritic, that means itchy, inflammatory skin disease that occurs most frequently in children but also affects adults. Well, interestingly enough, 30 to 89, that's a wide range of age, and we asked about age 30 there.
Yes.
15% of people in that age group have atopic hand dermatitis or somewhere on the body, and that is eczema. So yes, it's common over age 30 and can occur with it. Did not occur in childhood. And that first picture that you're looking there is actually kind of hard, even when you're looking at that picture full screen, to see much on it. And what's actually on that is little dry patches on the back of your hand. You would scratch that little patch. You'd think, I wonder if I got some bleach on it or something, and you'd leave that alone. And if it didn't bother you too bad, you're putting, hand lotion on it, and it's taking care of itself. You don't need to do anything else. But now show that second picture. That second picture is a child, although this can occur in adults, whose hand looked like hand number 1, but got infected with the fever blister virus because the barrier of the first hand is not as efficient against infection and against irritation as the normal skin barrier. So what this eczema or atopic dermatitis boils down to is, for a variety of reasons, and some of them are genetic and actually change the way the skin works or change the natural lubrication on the surface of the skin, the barrier that it has to infection goes down, and it makes you more likely to get in trouble. And that fever blister right there on that kid's hand probably would have been just one normal little thing on you or on I if you don't have it and you didn't answer the question. But if you've got that atopic dermatitis, and if it's pruritic and you're itching it enough to where it bothers you, this is one of the things you really need to go see the doctor about, rather than try to take care of yourself.
Okay, moving right along.
You got any questions about that, Sam, Amanda, or you got it down? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Now, this one, I understand it, but well, you're going to explain this. I recently moved to Florida. And started experiencing allergies. Okay. Started experiencing allergies. Could it be the area has something that wasn't in Georgia? So when we move to other areas, how does that affect us, and what could it be? Allergies itself.
That answer is true, 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 and true. Okay. First of all, that's true, 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 and true. Throw those pictures up on the side over there where they don't get to be too big. you're looking there just at representative things that caused most allergies. To the left is a tree, happens to be a birch tree. To the right is ragweed, and then to the bottom is just plain grass. Well, everybody knows that down in Florida you got the Bermuda grass on the golf courses, and you know, somewhere else we got the fescue grass. That question would have been much more appropriate to what actually happens if it said, I recently moved from Florida to Georgia and I got allergies. Is there something that could be different in the environment? The answer is either direction, that's the right answer. But most of the time, these environmental allergies are to dust mites, to cockroach debris, and to things that are common to the house regardless of where it is. And that's the ones where the people have it all year round. And then the seasonal allergy obviously starts right now. It starts just in, let's see, this is the 15th. Right now in Atlanta, that little yellow thing, what's that little yellow thing pops up? Jonquils or whatever it is. The little flower does like that. They are popping up out of the ground. Daffodils? Daffodils. Okay, those little daffodils are poaching up out of the ground. They're that high now. I haven't even been down there yet. But that starts on the 15th. Doesn't make any difference for snow on the ground. And then that's going to run through about June here. So down in Florida, it started months ago. And that's just basically grasses, trees, and the like, and they're all different. Now, the reason I said it'd be a much more common answer if you moved to Georgia is that Atlanta is 1,000 feet altitude, and Atlanta is one of the worst cities in the nation for allergies because they've got the mountains of Blue Ridge, Georgia, which is 1,800 feet, just 50 miles away as the crow flies, and then 50 miles away as the crow flies is the coastal plain, which is almost sea level. So the moving air brings the sea level coastal plain pollen to Atlanta before it brings the pollen to Atlanta, followed by the pollen from Blue Ridge. So Atlanta gets 3 different whacks of pollen. So this would be a much more common answer if the patients had moved from Florida to Georgia, but the answer is still the same.
You know, I have, it's a pear trees out in the front yard. And
that's the white one. Is that
yes.
the white one?
Yeah. And yesterday I pulled in the driveway, and I noticed they have buds on them, and I said, "Oh no!" When 17 years ago when I first moved here, I thought it was the most beautiful thing.
Isn't it though?
No, not really. No, I don't think
it's beautiful. But your eyes water.
Yeah.
Your nose gets
yeah. So yesterday I was looking at the buds, and I'm like, "Oh no!" I used to go and don't say anything. I'm not saying negative. When I first moved up here 17 years ago, you know, I would go down to Allergies, and when you get down in there, they planted a whole row of them. Yeah. And the first year that I lived up here, I thought, that's beautiful. That's the most beautiful thing. It just don't feel the same way anymore. I love it here, but you know, it's just my eyes and. I
don't recall, Sam. You lived here all your life. When did they stop planting wildflowers in the interstate highway in the 515s?
They do them sporadically.
I know sporadically, but they ran all the way from Blue Ridge to Canton.
They still do it, but they're just not as.
Yeah, I know there are little spots of them, but it used to be everywhere. Yeah. I go ahead and throw up that chart that you got on there. It actually is about now that you need to go to don't please pharmacists, I love you. But go to the Walmart or the Costco or the cheap place, and go in there and you'll see the Claritin, the Zyrtec, and the Allegra, and then right beside it you'll see the generic one. And it's going to be just a week or two before people like my wife are going to have to start taking that stuff, and then take it till fall. And they're very inexpensive in the generic form. If you read the back of it, that chart there, you can just show it for a minute. If you read the back of it, it said side effects include your hair falls out, your feet go flat, and you have epileptic spells and everything else. That's not what that says. But none of that stuff happens. I mean, the side effects of non-sedating antihistamines are essentially zero. Otherwise, they wouldn't sell them over the counter. And it really is a self-medication thing that we approve of. And it's a lot easier to take that than then to get an obstructed airway and then, an ear, and to get an earache and everything else just because the pear tree is blooming. And when your car turns green from pine pollen,
oh, I know,
you are not allergic to pine pollen. Do you know why?
Why?
Because the particle, the pine pollen is so heavy, it settles to the ground, makes your car green. It has to be invisible and very small for you to be able to inhale it. Now, as you know, you've got little hairs and mucus in the front of your nose, and as the air goes in, it spins like that. And it centrifugally throws the pollen out, and it sticks to the membrane of your nose, and it doesn't get in where it can make you allergic unless it's really tiny. So that one doesn't make you sick, but every one of those grasses does.
Well, you don't know how much I'm looking forward to fresh cut spring grass. Okay, moving right along.
And Claritin. Okay, go ahead.
Moving right along. Hey, folks, in just a minute, we're going to be talking chili, fire, ice, and chili. What does?
Well, I make great chili.
Yeah. Do you?
Jane was a judge.
Oh, I should have never said chili.
Jane was a judge a few years ago, and I went down there. It was really cold. I remember it was really cold.
Oh, yes, 2 years ago.
Yeah, I think it was 2 years ago.
But we still had thousands of people.
Oh, yeah. And the Mercier daughter that everybody knows out there working, I said, look, you should be indoors. It's too cold out here. And all of these local people were out there in the absolute freezing cold, helping people get to the spot, saying, look, stand in the line and get your stuff. So, I was with the judge, but I didn't. I stood in every daggum line. I went through the thing, and then I turned around, went all the way back and did it again. I did it twice.
Okay, we're going to talk about that
in just a minute. I'll tell you which one I said was best, but go ahead.
Oh, that was mine. I was in it that year. I remember you voted for me. I started having chills. And a headache, but no fever. Okay, these are the clues. I started having chills and a headache, but no fever. Should I be tested for the flu, or do you always have a fever with the flu?
I am really grateful for the question. How long, Sam, have I been talking about the flu? 8 months or something? Because we knew this was going to be bad. Generally, let's say when we're talking about somebody who has nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea, or sore throat, and we say gargle hot salt water, take 2 aspirin, and call me in the morning, or watch this for a few days, and if it gets worse, do something. This is not the watch it for a few days. If you have the headache and the chills, remember that Tamiflu is only effective if begun in the first 24 to 48 hours of the flu. And interestingly, the first symptom of the flu generally is headache, aching, and then the chill and the fever. So if the headache has come and you've got the chill, but you don't have the ache yet, you don't have the fever, and it's right now, and you're in the middle of a flu epidemic, you get tested today, because the only way that the Tamiflu is going to do you any good is if you actually started on day 1 or day 2. So the answer is no. If you've got that starting, you don't have to have a fever yet. You really don't even have to feel like somebody's beat you up with a 2x4 yet. So a headache and a chill, if it's right now and today, you're going to go and get it checked for the flu. Now it's going to tell you that this told me something and tells you something I think is very important. Once you've got somebody in the house with suspected flu or tested flu, but if they were sick and they didn't go and now they get sicker the next few days, they need to stay in that house. They were shedding that virus 24 hours to 48 hours before that headache and chill began. They're going to shed the most of it on days 3 and 4 of the actual symptoms. So they shedded the virus for 2 days in the incubation period. Then they began with the symptoms. It's going to get worse, and worse. And then in the 4th day, it'll start to fall off. But they'll be shedding that virus for 7 or 8 days. So they should stay in the house, hand washing. You wash your hands. You remember a few weeks ago, paper plates, plastic cups, knives. I mean, they can make everybody in the house sick. So this is what happens in a house. Number 1 gets the thing. The incubation period then is 2 to 4 days. Then the second one gets the thing 2 to 4 days later. then the third one gets the thing. And it used to be with other kinds of infections, if you had a fairly good sized house, once it had passed around the circle, it was like the what's that ring around the rosy or something. It came back around the second time. This flu won't, because you will have antibodies from the first one. But the headache and the chill, go get tested. So I'm really.
So don't wait for fever.
Yeah, don't wait for fever, because that Tamiflu won't help you unless you got it early.
Okay, that's all the questions.
You like that one?
Yeah, I like that one.
Good.
I like that one. I'm knocking on laminate or wood or whatever I have here, so don't. You have me a nervous wreck.
Okay. All right. We're not going to talk about the poop.
Okay. No, we're not. No, we are not talking about that.
Okay. I answered that one offline.
Yes, you answered that one offline. We'll do a special on that. Before we close today, like we always do, Dr. Whaley, do you have anything in the medical world or any research or anything out there, even if it teetered on politics from time to time? What would you like to close with today?
This first one does teeter on politics, but not totally. The head of the CDC, I think it was the CDC, had to resign, and they say that the worst thing she did was when she was head of the Health and Human Services in the state of Georgia. She took a $1 million contribution from Coca-Cola when they were having their healthy food campaign that said don't drink sodas and exercise more, and after she got the contribution, they changed the wording, like for Hillary Clinton, from don't drink sodas and exercise more to exercise more. Well, anyway, what I was going to say is, day before yesterday, and this made it to the actual news, that made it to the Communist News Channel and to the Fox. There was a study, and this is kind of important. When you have 105,000 people in your group, that's pretty statistically significant. So 105,000 Frenchmen, they followed them, and a 10% increase in the amount of processed food. Now that's going to mean these things, it's going to mean any kind of cookies or anything you buy at the supermarket. It really means many just prepared breads. An increase of 10% in processed foods raises by 12% the incidence of cancer. Now, what's the baseline from which you raise 10%? And the baseline that they had actually was quite low, because you got the 5 or 7 servings of vegetables and all that stuff. I think they allowed 6 servings a week of things like a donut to be the baseline. Then if you raise this up above 10%, you got a higher incidence of cancer. Well, that's kind of scary. And so it's another one of those things about control your snacking, and stick to snacking on oranges and apples from Merciers and stuff like that.
Well,
and I got one more after you.
Go ahead. No.
I want you to comment on this one. I saw you at the Mercier's party, and you had one of those sweet things. I mean, I'm not tattling on you, but
get him, Dr. Wood.
No, the only thing he has wrong is he said I had one.
Yeah.
That's the only thing it was.
We met at the dessert table, and I had a plate full of them.
We were.
How many goodies he ate at the basketball tournament?
Hey, you stop over there.
Before we started our fitness challenge.
Oh.
So we met.
He was getting warmed up.
Yeah, we met at the dessert table. We got over there, and they had those mini fried pies. I said, "How are you?"
It was good, wasn't it?
Yeah, let's move on.
All right, the next one. I think this is a huge advance in science. Everybody here will see it as a great opportunity to save a ton of money and improve outcomes in our kids and in athletes. There has been licensed by the FDA this week a blood test that takes 4 hours to run for a chemical in the blood called the Banyan Brain Trauma Test that is 97.5%. Think about that, 97.5% predictive that you have a concussion. And that saves you then. If it's negative, it's 99.6% predictive that you don't have a concussion. So when your kid falls off the swing set, or the kid out here at Fannin High School takes a whack, and they would have ended up in the emergency room getting a CT scan, which was the minimum requirement, you're going to save tens of thousands of CT scans because the blood test is negative. If the blood test is positive, you do the test, you enter the concussion protocol, and hasn't hit the NFL yet, but you see how many guys have come off the field, gone into the tent, they say they're in the concussion protocol and will not return. This would not let them return because it's a 4-hour-long test, but it might get them back into practice the next day. So I think that's a huge advance in science.
Thank you, Dr. Whaley.
It's not going to be cheap.
We have a viewer question real fast.
Okay.
Okay, someone sent in, where can you get tested for the flu without having to wait for 3 hours at the doctor's office? Can you get tested at a pharmacy?
The answer to the question is, unfortunately, the tests for the flu virus are in short supply today. And if you go to a doctor's office or an urgent care center, you may find that they don't even have it in stock. And no, you can't get tested at a pharmacy unless it's a CVS or one of those pharmacies that have what they call the Minute Clinic. And we don't have a Minute Clinic in the mountains. CVS and Caremark, as you see, are going to merge, and I think you're going to find in Minute Clinics 2 years from now everywhere. And yes, you would be able to be tested there, but you're not tested.
So you suggest calling walk-in places first to see if they even have the test?
Yes, call the walk-in place and call your doctor. Do you have the flu test in stock? If not, keep on looking, and you may have to end up in an emergency room. I think all the emergency rooms are kept supplied and that they have not run out of them.
Okay, folks, we want to thank Georgia Cancer Specialists every week for this segment. If you have a question for the doc, I'll give you an example. This is my question, and I'm doing it now because I don't want it answered till next week, but he will know a week in advance. I sit home and watch TV, and they keep telling me if I send in so much money and take a DNA test, they'll come back and tell me, you know, where all my 1,000 ancestors are from. And but is that real? I don't know, but that's one of my questions. Do you have a question for the doc? Info, INFO, at fetchernews.com. Put in the subject line, ask the doc, send us a question. We'll get it to Dr. Whaley. Are those DNA tests on TV? Are they real? I don't know. I'm asking the doc now. You can ask a question too. Again, thank you, Georgia Cancer Specialists. We're getting ready to talk for just a couple minutes about chili. How can you go wrong talking about chili? Right after these messages.